Okay, so for figure six, previously they had showed that row activity uh, is supported by beta one integrin, but not in beta three integrin. Whereas the RAC GTPase in figure 5A express RAC had been expressed in both beta one and beta three integrin. So over time, evidence has showed that there's a crosstalk between the Rho and the RAC pathway in the GE beta 1 and GE beta 3 cells. But the cells are balance favored towards Rho GTP uh, due to the higher levels. So Dannon and colleagues investigated whether this was due to Rho A activity or an imbalance between Rho and RAC. So what they decided to do was create a RAC mutant um, that was transient in the activated form of RAC. And what they seen was a conversion between was observed from the beta 1 and the beta 3 integrin morphology, as you can see here in figure A. And also, if you look here in the green fluorescent proteins, they observed paxin had also been decreased. And paxin is a protein that adheres the cells to the extracellular matrix. So once they had established this, they wanted to clone the RAC mutant in order to see if there are any conversions to the B3, the beta 3 associated migration. So here's what they observed in figures 6B and 6B and 6C. You see with the RAC mutant that you still have you still see an increase in the beta 3 and the beta 1 cells. So that is to say that there is no um, oh, okay. This is to say that there is uh, no change in. Okay, so in figure C, we associate with the RAC activity, and there is an increase in the amount of RAC that's present without a decline in the GTP levels. The decline in the Rho GTP levels for what you see in figure C. And here in figure D, what you observe here is they applied the RAC mutant to the PMA treatment. And which we see here in the beta 3 integrins and the RAC mutants is that it did not establish the cytoskeleton rearrangement as induced by PMA. And the RAC mutants failed to polarize, and you see that as they migrate, you see they move very erratically, and the smallest sparse cultures, they stated that there was little movement observed. So what we had also established previously that Coughlin had played an active role in the actin cytoskeleton polymerization. I'm sorry, polarization, and what we seen in Figure 3. So what they decided to do here was was to actually look at the levels of Coughlin being expressed. So they phosphorylated Coughlin on the SR3 beta 1 integrin. And as we observe here, that there were no reductions in Coughlin expression and the total amount of Coughlin. So what they had suggested was since RAC does still phosphorylate Coughlin, maybe it had no way to increase the amount of Coughlin in order to cause cytoskeleton polarization. So lastly, they had created a Coughlin mutant as well to complement the RAC mutant and see if there was going to induce a change to see if they had noticed any morphological change or induce cell migration. What they had seen was what they had seen was the reorganization did occur in response to PMA, but the cells were distorted, as we can see here. So the cells were distorted, and others exhibit the beta 3 integrin phenotype. And in the spare cell culture, there was initiation of the membrane extension of the leading edge for the cells that resembled the beta 3 cells, the beta 3 integrin cells, but there was no movement that occurred. So, with this being said, what we understand now is that RAC has the ability to cause the reorganization of the cytoskeleton and increase membrane stability, but it cannot support polarization of Coughlin or directional migration and cell adherent to fibronectin by the beta 1 integrins because it cannot regulate it cannot regulate Coughlin levels independently. So they actually do us a favor. Well, here in Figure 7, they actually try to map out the pathway that they kind of associated with all the experiments that they had compiled together to kind of sum everything up. And what they had basically established was that with Rho GTPase, it has a specific integrin regulatory mechanism, and inhibition of the Rho signal promotes cell membrane distortion, Coughlin-mediated actin polymerization, and cellular matrix adhesion stability. And it can cause morphological changes in the beta 1 to beta 3 migration pattern. But in contrast with RAC also promotes membrane reorganization, but cannot regulate Coughlin activity and regulate Coughlin activity, but it can cause partial conformational change to beta 1 and beta 3 integrins.